I'm offended by the language of uprising applied to people who are breaking into other black people's stores and looting them. This is a lack of values. And people who are destroying private property, destroying cop cars, in an uprising against what exactly? Against the black police chief, against a mostly minority police force, against the black mayor, against the black president, against the black attorney general, against against a city council that is 9 of 15 are black and all 15 are elected Democrats. What is the uprising against? What is it seeking to achieve? I still don't see what exactly the riots are seeking to achieve. Bottom line is, this is all, it all could be boiled down to just act like a mensch. Act like a human being. Honestly, it's not useful to riot, it's not useful to break things, it's not useful to throw rocks at people. And the idea that we're supposed to sort of correlate your level of outrage.
I'm going to stick to the 30 seconds on
this
one.
The last sentence.
Yeah.
The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification. In other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Anybody can jump in. It's an open mic there.
But there has to be racism. You can't say there's no racism.
Without evidence?
No. I'm just saying that I don't know which animal. Maybe we're talking about dogs racist. Or something. I'm talking about human beings, and I'm like, human beings are most likely going to have racial prejudices. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I don't know. I come from planet Earth.
Charles, I want to ask you a question. So your default is that when there is no evidence, racism is the deciding factor. That is
no, it's not saying that. I'm just saying that you're going to have sexists, you're going to have racists, you're going to have all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that.
I agree it exists, but the problem that I'm seeing, and this is the problem with the general conversation, is that there's no solution in simply saying there's racism out there. How does that solve anything? I mean, when you talk about there's institutional racism, what does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But you need, the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who is out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment. On the Black Lives Matter idea, I want to find the people. I want to find the people alongside you who think Black lives don't matter. I'm still looking for those people. Really, I mean, like the implication is, of course, that for a bunch of people out there, for some reason, they're fine with black people getting shot in the street for no reason. Hands up, don't shoot was based on a lie. That's problematic. The idea that there is a huge number of black young men who are being shot for no reason by police officers is not statistically true. It's just not statistically true. The fact is that according to statistical studies at John Jay College, if you're a white man in a similar confrontation with police, you have a better chance of being shot by police than if you are a young black man. More white men are shot by the police every year in the country than young black men are shot by police in the country. The idea that there is a spate, and there's an easy proof. We know all of their names. We know all of their names. When there are 30 million black men in America. Okay, when we know President Obama said that we have a spate, it's a slow-rolling crisis. Once every couple of weeks, we have a case that's under dispute. So let's take his statistic. Okay, so let's say it's 26. Not one is too many, and we all agree. But is it really a slow-rolling crisis with a broad trend across the nation when there are 30 million black people in the entire country? and 26 people are shot under disputed circumstances, and probably at least half of those, the cop is at least justified. In Michael Brown, he was justified. Okay, and so basing it on falsities, you can't base a narrative on lies.
We're running out of...
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Like, okay.
Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
Sex is biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society. It's
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place. They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl.
People are very more things in culture.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
Completely different thing. You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
Our next guest has strong words for me. He says, I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Pierce, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Pierce.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. At a very basic level, you can't have a welfare state with open borders, right, because people come across the border and take advantage of the welfare state. So what you have to do first is you have to secure the border, and then you figure out what to do with the people here, whether that means pathway to citizenship or whether that means just legal residency. And I think that pretty much everybody agrees on that. The problem is that the president has been so lax on border security that people don't trust his enforcement of border security. So this has been the sticking point.
Wait a second here. Now, first, I don't think that border security and a pathway to citizenship are mutually exclusive. Those two things can happen simultaneously at the same time, and that is the compromise. That is the place of compromise for Democrats and Republican, Larry. They can happen at the same time. We can build a fence, we can build a wall, we can build an electric fence if that's what they want, but at the same time, we need to provide a pathway to citizenship for those 11 million that are in the shadows. The Republican Party's problem is they cannot get a pathway through citizenship out of the United States House of Representatives, whether they like it or not, whether we beefed up the border or not, whether we put Marine Team 6 on the border, they would still not be able to pass a pathway to citizenship.
That's simply not true. If you secured the border, people would pass a pathway to citizenship.
Count the votes.
I promise you, I know the Republican Party pretty well, and if you were to secure the border, then you would be able to pass a pathway to citizenship. You would.
Why can't those happen? Why are those two things mutually exclusive?
Why are they connected?
Because if we're dealing with immigration as a total issue. They're not separate issues.
Of course they're separate issues, because the fact is that if you do
not.
Okay,
it's
fine.
It's all about
you're
maintaining
right.
our border and having immigration control.
So you're right. Let's assume you're right, and we'll completely connect them. Okay, but the way we'll connect them is we won't have any border security. Amnesty for everybody. Is there a problem or no?
That's not what. But see, but this is exactly where they go to, Larry. Every time we have these discussions,
this is where we go to. Why don't you explain why they have to be connected?
And that is not. Well, wait a second. That is not what's in the Senate bill. In the Senate bill, which is the Democratic solution, which has been endorsed by the president and all the Democrats in the United States Senate, that bill strengthens our border. It increases border security, and at the same time provides a very, very, very long pathway to citizenship that takes almost 10 years. It is completely and totally bipartisan. Yet still, Republicans in the House won't even bring the bill to the floor for a vote.
Richard,
that tells you right there, Larry, that they don't agree with the pathway to citizenship.
Why can't they vote?
Honestly, I have one question in all of this. Seriously, just one question. Why not just secure the border and then put a pathway to citizenship in?
Why can't those happen at the same time?
Why don't you answer my question instead of asking me back why? I just explained to you why they can't. Here's why they can't happen at the same time. As you secure the border remains somewhat open. People cross the border because they feel that if they get in before the deadline, if they get in before the border is secure, then they are somehow included in the pathway to citizenship. Of course I've read the bill. And not only have I read the bill, I've been watching what's happening on the border with tens of thousands of children crossing the border in anticipation of amnesty.
Wait, because we have
what do you think is happening?
There's no law right now. But in the Senate
there's no
bill,
law right
we
now.
talk about
You're right. There's no law against crossing the border illegally.
In the Senate bill, we talk about who qualifies for a pathway to citizenship, and those deadlines do not apply to those individuals that cross the border.
And how are you going to magically determine that, Richard?
Today.
Do they have a magical
It's in the bill.
Right, they have
Read the bill.
I've read the bill, Richard. Can you explain to me when
you haven't read it correctly.
when you determine who has crossed the border when? I was unaware that everybody who crosses the border has a barcode saying when they came across.
You have to bifurcate it. Did she deserve the honor? Probably not. Is she brave? Of course she's brave. All those years invested as this sports legend. To come out transgender is horribly difficult. It is the most difficult thing you can do. I've been overseas. I've flown helicopter missions, surveillance missions. I've been shot, stabbed. Being brave is being yourself. And being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award? Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's
that's
her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train. She wants to be called she. I'm going to call her she. I just have a problem with the message and the messenger.
Well, let's I'm going to do two things. I want to reiterate what Zoe said, which is the bifurcation of the courage to come forward after a lifetime as a male and a certain kind of a male versus did she deserve this award? Listen, the awards, what are award ceremonies except an opportunity to catch some eyes?
Especially the ESPN.
So, yeah. It's like ESPN, well done, ABC. Yeah. They did exactly what their job was, to attract eyes. They did it. That's what award ceremonies are for. But in terms of the science behind gender dysphoria, you're very familiar with that, Zoe.
Very familiar.
It's not about the chromosome. Excuse me, the chromosomes within our
both know
nuclei. Yeah, go ahead.
Chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female.
Gender.
With gender
identity. Go ahead. No, so
especially, but even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well, no.
What are your genetics?
Zoe, I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well,
Yeah.
but wait. To be fair, but to be fair, you're actually being
Hey,
guys.
rude.
You're
and that-
no.
and that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who's biologically a male is a male.
You just
someone
called
who's
me.
biologically